Here's Professor Jiang to tell a bunch of lies about the theory of evolution.
Arguably, he is the most influential thinker of the past 20 years. And the reason why is he wrote a book called The Origin of Species, and he presents to us the theory of evolution. And you all know the theory of evolution because they teach this to you in school, and it's embedded in our everyday lives. And there are three main ideas to the theory of evolution. The first is that it was all accidental.
Nope, only mutation is accidental. Natural selection is very deterministic.
So you have these genetic mutations, and the mutation that is best fitted to survive in the environment would win out.
How is that accidental? If the mutations that are most effective at surviving are the ones that survive, that's obviously not an accident.
Okay, so it's all a random, accidental process. That's the first thing.
You just described a process that's neither random nor accidental.
Second thing is that it is materialistic, meaning everything that you can see is all that exists.
That's not what materialistic means. You can't see air. Materialism doesn't say that air doesn't exist. It says that only matter exists, but that's not true of evolution. Evolution also recognizes that immaterial energy exists and that space and time exist.
The third thing is it is emergent, meaning that things build on top of each other. It is a bottom-up process. Now, the theory of evolution marked a turning point in human history because before, European countries were Christian, and Christians believed that there was a divine God who created us, and as such, we were all equal before the eyes of God. Therefore, you cannot go and enslave other people. You cannot go and kill other people.
The Bible explicitly says you are allowed to buy slaves, and God himself is portrayed as ordering the mass unaliving of the Canaanites and Amalekites.
As well, there were three main ideas to Christianity. Okay, the first idea is one omniscient and omnipresent God. The Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is what infuses life. It's what gives meaning and purpose to life. And the world is a mystery. We have to hold faith. There are things that we cannot understand.
It's kind of weird that the three main ideas in Christianity never mention Jesus.
God has a plan, but it is a mysterious plan. And so we must be humble and serve the purpose of God. Okay? And the theory of evolution destroys this conception of the universe and introduces a more materialistic one.
No, it doesn't. Materialism as an idea long predates the theory of evolution. Jiang talks about Darwinism as though everyone was Christian until The Origin of Species was published, and then the whole world became atheist.
So why did this happen? Well, it happened for three reasons. The main reason is that we live in the 19th century, when Darwinism came into being. Europeans were engaged in a process of imperialism. They were going around the world and conquering other people and colonizing other people and essentially committing genocide. So they needed a theory to explain why this was happening.
No, Darwin needed a theory to explain why different species have different features that all seem to be uniquely suited for their environments. He wanted to figure out why finches have different shaped beaks, not why Europeans were engaging in colonialism. The reason it was so widely adopted was because nothing in biology makes sense without it, not because it excused colonialism. And
Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest was the most appropriate theory. And the idea is that the world is divided into races, and the white race is superior to everyone else, and therefore the white race has legitimacy in colonizing other people.
No, the theory of evolution has nothing to do with legitimacy. There is no ought that can be derived from Darwin's description of how things are or why they are that way.
And evolution would give rise to racism and eugenics, okay?
Because, as we all know, racism didn't exist prior to 1859. Also, eugenics is prescriptive. Evolution is descriptive and explanatory. The former does not follow from the latter.
So, before Darwinism, we didn't really have a concept of race.
I'm pretty sure the folks in the American South had a concept of race well before 1859.
Because everyone was equal in the eyes of God.
I really don't think the plantation owners of the 1840s believed that.
And now, with the rise of Darwinism, the world is divided according to race. As well, because of evolution theory, people started to believe in eugenics, which is the idea that stupid people people who are not white, they should be sterilized.
Why would the racist folks who enslaved non-white folks believe that they should be sterilized? That's like cattle ranchers thinking that all cattle should be sterilized.
Because if we let them live, all they would do is dilute the genetic pool, okay?
Which is actually not consistent with Darwinism, which says that the whole reason diversity exists is because it facilitates adaptation. The less dilute and more pure a genetic pool is, the greater the risk of extinction. The biggest reason why sexual reproduction evolved was because when a population consists of organisms which are all genetically identical, like a population that reproduces asexually by cloning itself, a pathogen or other threat which can kill one organism can kill every organism in that population. When a population is genetically diverse, rather than identical or similar, there is a greater chance that some portion of that population will happen to have immunity to any new threat that emerges. Eugenics is anti-Darwinian.
And even today, guys, there are still many people who believe in racism and eugenics. The thing about evolution that's very important is that it's a teleology, okay? What does that mean? It means that it's a theory of human progress about God.
No, it isn't. Teleology is the idea that things are moving toward a premeditated goal. That's a theological idea, not a scientific one. The direction of evolution is not premeditated, it is reactive. It doesn't aim at any final state, rather it reacts to and is shaped by the environment as it currently exists.
So even though evolution thinks that genetic mutation is an accident, the teleology is that will the strongest survive?
Not true. Strength is not always an effective adaptation. If it were, then insular dwarfism would never occur. When large species end up stuck on an island with very restricted resources, it becomes an advantage to be smaller and weaker because you can survive on less food. So the species shrinks generation over generation.
And that's what's right, okay? So might makes right.
No, the theory of evolution makes no moral or ethical judgments whatsoever.
So in many ways, evolution is a rejection of Christianity. So you would think that Christians would oppose Darwinism and evolutionary theory. But what was surprising is that when the book came out in 1859, only in 20 years, the theory of evolution would come to dominate the entire Western world. It became the dominant idea in schools, in universities, in the sciences. And even today, evolution is a dominant paradigm, meaning that you cannot question evolution.
Yes, you can. If you couldn't question evolution, then scientists would never have been allowed to test it. The reason evolution is taken so seriously is not because you can't scrutinize it. It's because it has consistently withstood scrutiny. It consistently survives every experiment that challenges it.
If you question evolution, it means you're crazy. Okay, but I'm crazy, so we're going to question evolution today.
Do you have an idea for an experiment that could falsify evolution? If you do, how about you run that experiment and tell us the results?
All right, so you've studied this in school, but evolution means we came from monkeys, apes, and then there were different species of humans, and eventually the best, our species, the Homo sapiens, won out.
We are clearly the best human species or subspecies at not going extinct.
Okay? So what evolution says is that we are just a monkey, guys, okay? We're just a monkey.
More specifically, we're apes. By the taxonomical definition, a monkey or an ape is just a mammal that can fully rotate its shoulder joints. You talk about it as though being able to lactate or swing your arms in a circle is something degrading.
And what do monkeys do? Monkeys like to have sex, monkeys like to eat, monkeys like to fart. That's all we are. We're just monkeys.
I guess this is supposed to be an exhaustive list of everything that is enjoyable to primates.
All right? And this is the evolutionary tree of primates. But there are certain problems with this theory. Okay? The first problem is, if you look at evolutionary theory, what you should have is tremendous diversity as the species develops.
No, it doesn't follow that diversity within a species will always increase. Diversity within a species depends on things like the diversity of environments in which it exists and the degree of gene flow between those diverse populations.
But so why is it that we only have one human species?
In part because of the degree of gene flow between human populations. Speciation only occurs when gene flow between two or more populations is impeded. One reason why the Neanderthal subspecies no longer exists is because we interbred with them until they lost their genetic distinctiveness.
Okay, why aren't there many different ones? Well, the argument is that there were many different species before, but we won out. Okay? Okay, that's fine. But another problem is, why are we going all around the world? Okay? So all species of human beings like to migrate. But primates don't do that.
Yeah, they do, and they did so long before humans evolved. That's the reason there are Old World monkeys and New World monkeys.
Why is that humans like to migrate? And so the explanation often is, well, because of climate change, because of war, because humans are chasing game, okay, bisons and food.
No, the biggest reason is because human intelligence makes us very adaptable to diverse environments.
But then how to explain these people, okay? These are people who went to populate the Pacific Islands, Micronesia. That's kind of weird. First of all, it's really dangerous to go out to the Pacific for months and months, right? Also, like, how do they know that there'll be islands waiting for them in the Pacific?
They didn't, and they didn't have to. Lots of animals managed to get out to islands on anything that floats without knowing that they were going to end up on an island. Also, how does this refute the theory of evolution? I don't see how sea exploration being weird is evidence that evolution didn't happen.
So that's something that's very odd about human beings. In fact, there are lots of things that are really odd about us that other animals don't do. For example, we're very religious.
There are things that are unique to every species. That's what makes them their own species.
Okay? Okay, so the Neanderthals are supposed to be before Homo sapiens, but as you can see, what we've discovered are these religious ritual sites that Neanderthals, where the Neanderthals engage in religious ritual practice. That's kind of weird. What does religion have to do with survival?
It's a side effect of the ability to infer agency. Once you reach a certain level of intelligence, you develop the ability to infer that other minds exist. And a side effect of this is that humans occasionally infer agency where there is none. They infer that other aspects of nature have minds of their own, and they do rituals to try to persuade nature to cooperate with them.
In fact, you can argue that religion is a waste of time. Why aren't they hunting? Why are they using so much resources and time in building these ritual sites?
Because evolution doesn't consistently produce absolute advantages. Having brains intelligent enough to infer agency conveys a net advantage, but not an absolute one.
Okay? Homo sapiens did cave paintings. And these cave paintings, I will show you later on, they're extremely elaborate. As you can see, it's very time-consuming to actually do these paintings. Also, these paintings are in caves, deep inside caves that's very cold, and where there isn't much air. So it's kind of dangerous, actually, to be in these places.
It's very likely that the majority of paintings were made outside of caves, but the ones inside the caves are the only ones that survived the elements.
But we know that Homo sapiens spent a lot of time in these deep, wet caves drawing these paintings. That's not very utilitarian.
Again, evolution does not say that all evolved behaviors or physiologies convey perfectly useful advantages. It only preserves features that convey a net advantage or are at least as much of an advantage as a disadvantage.
And actually, for most of human history, we were in the Ice Age period. Okay, and as you can see, during the Ice Age, the entire world was basically frozen over. So how did we survive? Well, we survived by using the resources around us. Okay, so this is a mammoth. And so they killed a mammoth and they turned the mammoth into a house. Okay? Now the question is, how did they know how to do that?
They invented it using their imaginations. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.